The Front Row Show does not reflect the views of Utah State Athletics, or its affiliates.
Excuse me, what the hell's going on out here?
I wish I could say something that was classy and inspirational, but that just wouldn't be our style.
Stick this in your trophy case.
Utah State does exactly what we thought they'd do against Weber State. Now the focus turns to what we know the Aggies are capable of doing against USC. We're breaking it down this week on the Front Row Show. What is up, Aggie fans? Welcome to the Front Row Show. As always, we're your hosts. I'm Matt Sonnenberg.
I'm Lance Rasmussen.
And I'm Jeff Browning. Aggie fans, you know the drill by now. You should be following us on Twitter as well as all the other parts of the Front Row Network. There's no excuse not to. It's the best place to go for Aggie coverage. And also, just real quickly, something on Twitter that's been happening, if you haven't noticed, is Chucky tweets, which are kind of like Chuck Norris jokes, but with a Chucky twist because they're real, unlike Chuck Norris. Send those to the whiteboard account. Make that happen. That's a fun thing that's going on. Make sure you're a part of that.
When has Chuck Norris ever thrown for 5 touchdowns in a game?
Never.
Never.
Exactly.
Keaton's done it 3 times.
Let's quickly recap this Weber game because, like you said, Matt, Utah State did exactly what we thought they would do to Weber State. Decline the Wildcats, if you can even use that as a metaphor. They just steamrolled them. Game was over in the first quarter.
So basically, they ran over a cat with a car. Yeah. There's no decline going on here. The cat's dead.
Oh,
good times.
It was. The Aggies, Weber State was coming off a 70-7 loss, and somehow things got worse for them after that.
That's accurate.
It wasn't long before Chucky Keaton went up top. I think it was to Travis Van Leeuwen in the corner for like a 40-yard pass. And from right there, marched into the end zone. And that was just kind of the theme. The Aggies did whatever they wanted to do, offensively and defensively. And we did not have to see Chucky Keaton in the second half, the entire second half.
What was it? 12 straight possessions or 10 straight possessions, touchdowns for Utah State. And Weber State had how many punts in a row?
Something like 13.
It was a lot of punts.
We had them, I believe, and you can probably check this, but I think they had less than 30 total yards going into the second half.
We had more points than they had yards.
Basically.
Yes.
I mean,
it was,
we maintained for a long time, basically, they had 10% of our yardage on the game, which was wonderful.
Really, the big story from a Utah State perspective, really, it's not even the game. It was the fact that our crowd balled out in a big way for this game.
Yes. One of the things I noticed is I got into the stadium around 5:30, and I remember looking down and seeing the student section, not just mostly full, but packed. I mean, the USU students this weekend brought it. And this is for a game they knew we were just going to steamroll them, but it's exciting. I get it that it's the first home game and it's exciting, but even with all those factors considered, awesome job by the students.
And don't forget the rain. I mean, when the rain came, my first thought was you're going to see everyone hit the exits because we were already up 49-0 or whatever, and no, I mean, the crowd stayed. It was awesome up until, the fourth quarter.
And it's something we actually saw the players really appreciate on the social media that we can get in touch with. That
was a big-time crowd.
Really appreciative of what we were able to do all the way up into the end of the fourth quarter and the support we gave them all the way through. So good on anyone for that.
One thing we've always said that is if you want to be a big-time program, act like a big-time program. And you know what?
That was it.
Minus the late start that some people had to tailgating. We'll work on that as the season rolls on. But, man, the game day atmosphere inside the stadium, that was big-time program material, Utah State. So be proud of yourselves.
Game balls, real quick.
Oh, man. I'm gonna throw it out to Craig Harrison. Gets a touchdown pass.
Why not?
He's been in there so many times when we've had a big lead and hasn't had an opportunity to throw the ball. It's like he came right out and just, here, Keegan Anderson, go for it, man. Hit him for a long touchdown. Back-to-back weeks for Keegan Anderson with a touchdown, which is awesome to see because, this is a guy that we knew would be in the mix for the tight ends, but is really starting to produce.
Yep.
Well, my game ball is actually going to go somewhere in a similar vein. On the Keegan Anderson touchdown throw, they actually brought up that same route and that same pass had been used twice earlier in the game, both for touchdowns to DJ Tialavea, who has taken my game ball for the week for getting his first receiving touchdowns of the year, both in dominating fashion. And this is the first time he's really stood up and proven for the final step of getting those touchdown catches that he is going to be able to step in and be that receiving threat that we were all predicting at the start of the season.
Yeah.
So he's getting that. And I actually came up to an important realization this week, which is his number 91 was the score I gave him in our NCAA rankings to start off the season, which I did not put together until the last game. Wow. My game ball going to DJ Tialavea for not only a phenomenal catching game, but some amazing blocks and things that went happening.
I will give my game ball to Joey DiMartino.
Very nice.
8 carries, 105 yards, 3 touchdowns. Not more needs to be said. He's turning into a very valuable rushing threat for Utah State.
No question.
And my final shout-out game ball goes to Kyler Fackrell. And I get to now brag.
Yeah,
because we can
Lance,
go back.
This is a chance for you. Pat yourself on the back. You earned
this. Huge. We got a tweet in. What was it? 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
After Fackrell lined up in the Utah game, someone tweeted into us and was asking about whether or not when we would see him catch that back shoulder fade into the end zone, and we kind of all laughed about it. But in all seriousness, I stopped and said, "No, happened in the Weber game. Nailed it.
Everybody,
nailed it.
Front rowers, you are listening to a prophet."
Real quick, look at the big receiving threats that we've kind of had develop early on in this season in the end zone. I mean, Brandon Swindle in the Utah game had a pair of touchdowns. DJ Tialavea starting to be what we thought he would be. Keegan Anderson surprising more people with that. And then Kyler Fackrell on the board now.
And don't forget Ronald Butler with a beast of a touchdown in the Weber game.
And also, I mean, the guy who's really been leading this receiver corps had another great game. Travis Van Leeuwen.
Got it.
The dude keeps producing.
Well, and on top of that, Reynolds had a couple nice catches, and JoJo Natson was diving all over the place for balls. His first catch in this game just blew my mind. So
it was sweet.
This receiving core has not only just answered the call, but really exceeded every expectation I had from them at the start of the season.
Yeah.
Props to them. Props to Coach Bonight for what he was able to do. That, once again, we talked about it early on in the season, is him being an X-Factor coach, being able to be someone who was going to come in and change things. That core has really stood up, and they're going to be key in what we're going to be able to do, not only in next week, but for the rest of the season.
Yep.
Let's talk next week. This is the big one. We talked about program-defining victories, and Utah State is still kind of seeking that. We've been close. We don't need to discuss the past because it's brutally painful. Is this the week? Do we do it against the mighty USC Trojans?
We can, and it could be. Obviously, this is, I mean, in any of these big games, you can't point to it and say this is one we're going to go in. But consecutively, year after year, we keep looking at these games, and I think with a little bit more confidence every time going in and saying this could be the chance. Never have we, I mean, last year we were going up against a Wisconsin team that was having offensive line troubles into the game that we were going up against. This year, USC is a little unproven beyond one Boston College game. Their defense looks like they're standing out. Their
defense
might not
beast.
be clicking.
I mean, they're big.
But it could happen.
Here's what I'll say, and I know you said you don't want to talk about the history, but you look at all these close games we've had, starting with Oklahoma. Very good team that had a few injuries. I believe they lost Ryan Broyles before the start of that season, who was on pace to I believe set the NCAA career record for receptions, which I think he later got after a medical red shirt.
Yes.
But Ryan Broyles is a great player who they lost. We went in there, I think took them by surprise and made that game close. The year before, Texas A&M. We went in there, another team that I think athletically they gave us a lot of trouble, but again, battled out a victory. Auburn, coming off a national championship, had to replace a lot of guys, but still a very talented team who we had it and blew it. And then same thing was with Wisconsin, just big, tough, bruising football that we got it done against. With USC, I would say maybe even by far, they have the most raw talent of any of these teams that we've played. You look at their recruiting classes they've brought in, it's double-digit 5-star guys every year. And while I think there's obviously flaws in the recruiting rankings and that whole system,
there's no denying the talent.
There's something to it when one guy has caught the attention of that many people to be that highly rated. USC is littered with 5-star recruits who just they're big, they're strong, and maybe most importantly, they're fast. That's one note that we're going to see in this game that I think is going to be maybe the toughest challenge for Utah State is there will be plays where USC has a guy, whether it's one of their running backs, even one of their backups. If they get into the open field, they're going to have some serious speed we haven't yet seen this year and probably won't see the rest of the year. Same can be said for their receiving core. Same can be said for their defense. It's going to be a higher level of speed than the Aggies are used to dealing with. Now, while they may have the most raw talent, I think I can also comfortably say that without question, they're probably the most poorly coached of any of these big-time teams that we've played. Lane Kiffin has created a mess in there. Granted, he inherited a mess with the sanctions that they had.
Yeah.
But
He's made it worse.
he's made it worse. He hasn't done anything with it. I mean, he underachieved last year with a couple really great. I mean, he had a guy in Matt Barkley who, prior to last year, many thought would be the number one pick in the NFL draft. Not to mention Robert Woods, who's already having a solid start to his NFL career, and Marquise Lee, who won the Biletnikoff Award. Lee is still back, but Woods and Barkley are gone. And it's kind of been an issue that Lee doesn't have anyone to get him the ball consistently. Now, we did see against Boston College, he had a few plays where he got it, and that guy will not be caught by anyone on our team. Not to diminish the Aggies, but that guy is easily faster than anyone we have on the defensive side of the ball. But I think there's also going to be some quality pressure on USC's quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. Whoever ends up getting the bulk of the snaps, I think that's something where we're going to be in their face, and they're young and they're inexperienced, and they don't have a lot going for them.
And here's the thing with USC. They have shown time and time and again they are very capable of underperforming. They are. I mean, there's been many times throughout where, yes, they have all this athletic talent. There's no denying that. But they don't always play to the high level that talent could produce. They play down quite often, and this is a game where who knows how well prepared they really will be. I mean, how many of the players on USC really know where Logan, Utah is? Probably not many. Utah State has a chance to come out of the gates quickly and catch them by surprise, and if they do that, that could be the key to the upset, is coming out quickly out of the gates.
It's actually a little bit of it's an interesting position to be in for this game because yeah, we're going to be coming in. I think a lot of the kids might not have heard of us or heard of where we're from, but we're finally starting to garner a reputation of being someone who is going to be able to come in and make some noise in these big games, which is, you'll note, USC started 7 points favored on the Vegas ratings, and it's down to 6.5 and climbing the other direction at this point. You know, people are watching out for us to be able to come in and make some noise. It's going to be an interesting situation to see what their team is, how USC is going to react to us, because I think our guys are coming into this game knowing that we can compete.
I think one other quick note about this, too. I think USC let a few of their tricks out of the bag against Boston College.
They had to.
They were coming off of a loss to Washington State, which was a huge upset. Granted, Washington State might be kind of getting relevant again under Mike Leach, who's had success in the past, but they shouldn't be yet at the level where they're beating USC. And I think USC wanted to make a statement to kind of send a message, say, hey, you know, we're still big, we're still tough, and I think they might have tipped a few hands of theirs by what they did against USC. I know our coaches will probably be reviewing that film. I'm not saying it's going to be a huge advantage, but it is something that could have, you know, a big shift on a play or two here. If maybe we see something that they recognized in film and make a good play on the ball, it could make a difference.
Cougars are never relevant. Keys to the game.
I think getting into the backfield early. We'll hope to see Connor Williams return for this game. Apparently it's a day-by-day decision at this point is what we've heard. But the inconsistency with USC's offense has come from a lack of production getting their receivers having their quarterback throw the ball to the receivers. If we can get into the backfield early, rattle what they've been able to put together, and really put a lot of defensive pressure on their quarterback, they're in a pro-style offense. Their quarterback's not going to be break and contain. He's not going to be rushing for things. That's really what it is you have to be able to stop the run of the line of scrimmage that way and get defensive pressure there. I think that our offense is potent enough to be able to at least move the ball against their defense to a degree. I don't anticipate this is going to be a high-scoring game, so being able to shut down that pass, not necessarily in the secondary, but by shutting it down at the source of the quarterback is my big key to this game.
I think that is the number one thing, what Lance said, but also I think one thing the Aggies are going to need to do also defensively is don't give them space to run. If you let these guys accelerate and get into the open field, they're going to be able to beat guys around corners. They're going to be able to break free for big plays. You cannot let them get past you. You've got to be swarming as a defense and don't give them any space to run.
My key to this game is a fast start by Utah State. You don't want this game to come down to a special teams moment. We've been burned by that in the past. You do not want that to happen. And that's not even saying that the special teams would blow it. It's just saying you don't want the game to be that close where something crazy could happen. But also, when you look at program-defining victories for the teams we always talk about, like we want to be, the Boise States, the Utah, even TCU, when their big moments came, Boise State against Oklahoma, TCU against Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl, Utah against Alabama, there's a common thing in all those games. They jumped on them quick. They all had leads, and the big boys had to play from behind. Utah State has to make USC play from behind to where they'll be forced to be one-dimensional, where they'll be forced to go to the air game because they'll need to be playing catch-up. They have the receivers to do it, but once you take the running game out of the picture with a big lead, it's a big thing for Utah State.
Can I throw out one other random thing that they would actually have in common? The amount of exposure that the game actually brought into them.
Yes.
And I think that's something really cool that we actually get to talk about for this game is the fact on at least half the nation, wherever the line may be,
it will be available for everyone.
Is going to be watching it on ABC
Prime.
As
this game will be in like 300 million homes.
The rest of the nation is going to be able to check it on ESPN too, which is great. And I mean, I not to besmirch that at all, but the fact is we're on a mainstream network, primetime television, middle of a Saturday afternoon, the game to be watching. This is the ultimate stage for us to be able to go on. Not even just go in and play and compete. If we can go in and play this game and be competitive through it, it's huge. But if we can go in and pull a win off in this game in front of these crowds, it is
an arrival
monumental
moment
for what we're going to be able to pull off as far as exposure goes, not on a recruiting level, for the university in general, for this season, for Chucky, and what we've been trying to do about getting his name out there for the Heisman campaign and whatnot. It's huge. All right, joining us for the next segment of the program is the beat writer from the Salt Lake Tribune who covers the Utah State Aggies. This is Kyle Goon. We're going to talk to him a little bit tonight about what's happened in the last week and the upcoming game down at USC. How's it going, Kyle?
Hey, how are you guys?
Doing well.
We're doing well. Kyle, Utah State totally thrashed Weber State in a very convincing way. What can Utah State really learn from this game, and how does that translate to the USC game this upcoming week?
Well, I'm not sure I can say about the last quarter because I had kind of drifted off a little bit.
We all had.
Oh, you all did. You guys were in the rain drifting off. Yeah, I mean, I think, two things. First of all, you got to see some depth and you got some promise out of some of those younger guys who are going to get looks next year. Craig Harrison kind of showed he can be an efficient backup, so that's important. You have, Frankie Sutera, who's probably going to take over starting spot next year. You have Nick Vigil, who's going to take over starting spot next year. Got a lot of promise out of those guys. And then the other thing is Utah State got a chance to kind of work on its execution, some of the things that they weren't doing so well in sort of against a lesser opponent. It kind of gives them a little more time to kind of process, work through some of those things, especially in the secondary, those guys working through their visual keys. And it will be a lot faster against USC, but they did have a game situation where they were able to practice it.
So next week, we're going into the Coliseum at USC. It's a storied program, a lot of history and tradition. Lane Kiffin has a little bit of a fire lit underneath him right now from maybe the coaching perspective. They started off this year a little rocky against their first couple of opponents, but really seemed to pull things together against Boston College last week. Which version of SC are we going to see next week, and what should the Aggies be preparing for getting into the Coliseum?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that Coach Wells is preparing for that team that showed up last week against Boston College. Especially with some early problems kind of settling down, especially Cody Kessler getting settled in at quarterback. Seems like he's their guy. So you'd expect the offense to run a little bit more smoothly. They have the guy in Trey Madden who they really like, and he's done really well these first 3 weeks, and Kessler looked a lot better this last outing. So I would expect Coach Wells and company are preparing for that team that showed up last week.
So, Kyle, what is the roadmap that Utah State must use in order to pull off the victory at USC this week?
I think it's all going to be all about the run. On defense, if you're Utah State, you want to be able to stop Trey Madden and Justin Davis and some of those guys that they like to hand the rock off to. They're really comfortable with the run. It sets up a lot of their play action, some of their screens. It's going to do a lot to take away some of the offense, put a lot of pressure on the pass, and put a lot of pressure on Cody Kessler. And the other half of that is you want to be able to run if you're Utah State. The Aggies have gotten some good production out of Joe Hill, Joey DiMartino. They really do a lot to take some pressure off of Chucky. It helps a lot to just have those extra weapons that USC has to worry about and has to soften up a little bit. If you guys, if Utah State can't find a way to get the running backs out of the line of scrimmage against that odd front defense, it's going to be a lot of trouble and a lot of pressure for Chucky to score.
When you look at what this game could mean for Utah State from a national picture, not only for Chucky Keaton, but also for the program as a whole, what's your perspective on what a victory at USC would really do for Utah State?
Okay, well, first of all, it kind of puts the school in people's mouths. I think a win of Utah State over USC. Sorry, all the U's really gets my tongue tied. But Utah State over USC. That's got a leadoff Sports Center, or at least pretty close. That's a huge story. Utah State has never beaten USC, and they've struggled to just finish out those games against that caliber of team. So it gets the name in people's mouths. And the other thing is, to the people who already know Utah State, and also its fans, it kind of legitimizes Utah State as a program. Even if USC is having a down year, USC is supposed to win that game. They're supposed to win it with some conviction. That's why they scheduled it, probably. No offense. But
no, that's probably true.
Yeah, it just isn't supposed to happen. And it legitimizes Utah State in the eyes of the fans, in the eyes of power conference opponents, in the eyes of recruits. And I think Coach Wells definitely knows there's a lot on the line. And there's if you guys do lose this game, it's disappointing, but it's not nearly as much as you guys stand to gain.
I'm curious, you've been around the team. Have you noticed any additional preparations for this game, or is the team kind of taking the attitude of business as usual?
I think it's kind of a business as usual game. From the start of this season, they've kind of dropped the underdog mentality. They're not really into it, and I think Coach Wells, coaching staff, and the players kind of interpret no one believes in us, blah blah blah. They interpret that sort of as kind of a small school thing. They want to be a competitive program every year. They want to go into the game thinking we're the ones who should win this game. I think that's the attitude they took in the Utah game. They fought harder, but it's how you kind of have to be able to win some of those games, and you have that confidence. I think they kind of see their schedule, and as a lot of Utah State fans probably do, they see that schedule and they say, we could win every game on the schedule if things fall right. Things have to fall so right for an undefeated year. But there is no doubt that they can at least compete in every game on that schedule. And for their mentality, that's enough.
All right. Well, you got a score prediction for us?
Oh, man, I go back and forth. I think I have, just kind of given the quarterback situation, I think Utah State just has an advantage in this college football landscape. I'm going to give it to them 21-17.
Yeah.
Right.
I go back and forth on it. I'm not trying to be a homer. 'Cause you guys know that's not what I do.
You're on the front row show. You're allowed to be a homer here.
But
for a bit.
I think kind of given some of USC's struggles with the pass, because even though they had a good game last week, they're not a great passing team. I think when you look at that from that perspective, Chucky Keaton just gives Utah State a better chance to win. And, who knows? Maybe it's a high-scoring game. Maybe it's a no-scoring game with USC. That could happen. It could be wild. It could be very conventional. You never know until you're out there. And that's why I hate making predictions, but for you guys, I'll do it.
Well, Kyle, you got a lot of good stuff going on at the Tribune. You're obviously the beat writer. You started a new mailbag segment where Aggie fans can write in and ask you specific questions. So
I just ripped you off the tweet sheet. I hope you guys noticed. Right?
You know what? I even said that could have been close to the tweet sheet, but it's okay. We're all on the same team.
I encourage fans to tweet at me. I'm at Kyle Goon, or send me an email, kgoon@s2ep12.com. Don't send me any of your adult links. I'm not interested in that. Here's the thing. I really like the mailbag because you guys like it, and also because it's a chance for fans to kind of tell me what kind of stories they want to see, what kind of news they want. And, it is my first year covering the football team, so I'm just interested in making sure our coverage is serving the fans as they would like to read it, because ultimately, people got to read, and then that's what drives the business. So,
right.
hoping all y'all are reading and sending more questions, and it's a lot of fun.
Well, we appreciate you being with us. Good luck on the trip this week.
Absolutely. I'll send you guys a postcard from my pool.
You want to put out a public notice for the divine assistance you're going to need to make it to the airport and get to the game in time? See.
No, I'm not going to talk about that. But we'll just hope for the best.
All right.
But thanks, guys.
All right,
it.
Kyle. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Every once in a while, we like to take something that's going on and being talked about among our peers in Aggie Nation, where we like to weigh in. This week, we're talking about a hot topic.
Spoken!
This week's hot topic, it's been an interesting one. The debate is going on whether Joey DiMartino should be the number one at the running back position and Joe Hill should move to the number 2 position. Thoughts?
My initial thought is this. Both running backs are having good years so far. We're not used to necessarily seeing running backs out of this university function with the quarterback play that Chucky Keaton's been putting off so far this year. But Joe Hill's still averaging 4.5 yards a carry right now. Joey DiMartino's above that, which is fantastic. But a lot of people seem to be complaining that the reason that it needs to switch up is because Joe Hill isn't producing in whatever facet he is supposed to be producing, which apparently is making giant break-off touchdown runs that we got used to seeing Kerwin Williams do last year. My thought is I don't see a reason to switch things up as of yet. Last year, through the first 3 games, Joe Hill had more touchdowns than Kerwin Williams did. I'm not necessarily comparing and saying that it's 100% an exact mirror of the situation, but I would much rather stick with the system that's working right now and have both guys throwing 6 yards per carry. Mm-hmm. If they do need to, if they need to mix it up or do whatever, I guess it can happen eventually. But I don't see this as the call. The fact is I don't think Joe Hill is underproducing to the point he needs to be replaced. I think that he deserves the majority of the carries. I think he's proven in the past that he's capable of carrying the ball that many times and is going to be able to produce. And 4.5 yards a carry is exactly what I think we need him to be doing as of right now, which is enough to be able to keep the passing game open.
Here's the biggest thing is that every offense has had, every of the good USU offenses in recent years has had 2 guys contributing at the running back position. Last year, it was Kerwin Williams and Joe Hill. The year before, it was Robert Turbin and Michael Smith. The year before that, it was Dervin Spate and Michael Smith. And the year before that, it was Robert Turbin and... I can't even remember at this point. But there was multiple guys contributing and sharing that load. And the fact that, we've heard the hype on Joe Hill, and there had to be something to it. Mm-hmm. I'll agree. He has underperformed to the hype that was built for him, both from the players and I think what was expected of him. But on the flip side of that, Joey DiMartino has vastly outperformed people's expectations of him. And eventually, if that all comes down to balance, or maybe if Joe Hill just gets to where we all thought he would be and Joey DiMartino stays the way he is, we still have two very good running backs. And while, yeah, DiMartino's been great in running the ball, and he's been getting into the end zone, Joe Hill as a pass catcher has been great. He had a great catch against Air Force in the end zone, whereas Joey DiMartino hasn't been as good of the pass catcher. So both of them bring plenty to the table, and I think there's value in both of them. And look, this is Joe Hill getting his first taste as being kind of a premier back. It's going to take a second to get adjusted.
And he's still a junior. I mean, a lot of people are used to us having senior leadership coming in as our running back position. He's got 2 more years in this program.
Here's the thing. When I watch Joey DiMartino run, you're watching a man who's running on desperation because he's a senior. He's only got so much time left. And, that's a factor into it. The way I look at this is, the old adage, don't bring a knife to a gunfight. Well, here, you're not only bringing a gun, you're bringing a tank, and you're bringing a Sidewinder missile. I mean, look at the weapons Utah State has available to them. It's okay if Joe Hill isn't ripping off 100-yard touchdowns every touch, although that would be sweet. But you look at how many weapons Utah State has offensively with Chucky, the receivers, and now the running backs. The offense is in good hands. I don't think you can complain at all about the offensive production.
Yeah, at all. I mean, the fact, especially with this last game, 10 touchdowns in a game is really hard to argue with. No matter whose defense you're playing against, it's hard to argue against it. And if we can get our running backs producing the way that they've shown they can, I mean, not only just Joe Hill and Joey DiMartino, but Robert Marshall had a couple awesome carries in the Weber game that really, and he's been consistent in being able to knock stuff out. I mean, there's been a couple times we've watched him get a couple carries and all of a sudden he gets stood up at the goal line perhaps, but we talked about him to start the year off.
Our best weapon is how balanced we are offensively.
Well,
because where does it come from? No one knows, because it can come from anywhere.
That's 10 receivers and 4 running backs who could really come in and handle things.
Not a bad problem to have.
Well, and also, like you said about balance, maybe if Joe Hill has underperformed, like I said before, Joey DiMartino has overperformed what we thought. So the balance is still there. We're still producing running yards. It's just from a different person. And let's be honest, with Joe Hill's speed, he's going to break some. It's just going to happen eventually. He might not be Kerwin Williams of 2012 just yet, but he has the speed to be a great running back. The coaching staff believes in him, and he's going to catch some passes for touchdowns too.
Yeah, we haven't seen that screen pass. Our standard screen pass has yet to really show up this season.
Kind of one thing that I've really been wondering is where has that
Where
been?
is it? Because we know, I mean, he connected on it last year with Chucky Keaton, Joe Hill, We'll see.
And that's one of those things where if you give Joe Hill that space to run, his speed, once he gets going, is going to make a lot of defenders second-guessing their angles they took on him because he's going to be faster than they thought, and not many people are going to be able to catch him.
Yep. All right, Aggie Nation. Now's the part of the show where we're going to give our shout-out to the people that we think are sticking their arms around Aggie Nation and bringing them in close. This is our arms around moment of the week. And this week, we're giving the shout-out to the herd and the student section at Utah State. Some brilliant stuff that came out for the football game. I got to the stadium probably about 2.5 hours in advance, and as a student, I skip out on the tailgate if I get there that soon because I know the lines are going to start forming up. We got there. There were probably maybe 30 or 40 people in front of us in line, spread out over the whole thing. And as we sat there, I was getting some texts back and forth with a couple of my friends who were involved in the housing, Steve Schwartzman obviously being one of them. And he said that all of a sudden there was some noise going down with the stampede that was going on. I texted him about it. He confirmed that the bagpipes were playing, and he said it was an absolutely incredible experience. He texted me when they were at the top of the hill and said, "Get your camera ready." So I turned around to watch, and I saw people just start pouring down this hill. And then people kept pouring down this hill. And I thought for a minute, like, oh, that has to be the end. And they just kept coming, and they were loud, and they were ready for the game. And I think they calculated something like 1,500 to 1,700 kids had showed up specifically to just be part of that. They hopped directly into line, translate directly into the stadium. Exactly as Matt and Jeff were talking about earlier, people got there fast, they got there early, they were loud, they were dedicated, and they stayed for the whole game. Hugest shout out in the world for what the herd was able to do. This needs to happen every single game, and I have every bit of faith that it will, simply because people showed up for what could have been the most underrated and underperforming game of the year where we didn't have an opponent we were going to really need to fight against, and people still stayed. They were in the stands. This is our arms around moment of the week going out to every student who was at that game. You guys rocked it. Keep it up. Hold it all the way through basketball season. And I know this is not something I want to see, but I dare you guys to make something happen in the Spectrum where they have to address how many people keep showing up for those games. Because we've got 6,000 to 8,000 fans showing up for football games. If they have 6,000 to 8,000 students showing up per basketball game, things are going to be awesome. Get the Spectrum live when it happens. Keep the football, keep Romney Stadium going the way we want it. Excellent job, Aggie Nation. Nice job, Herd. That's our arms around moment of the week.
Now's the time in the show where you get to ask questions, and one of us just happens to be a prophet, and he'll respond. It's the tweet sheet.
I'm here preaching the gospel of Chucky Keaton this week, guys.
Amen. Amen, sir.
Let's get into this.
We had several tweets about Utah State secondary and USC's wide receivers, so we'll sum this up in a tweet by Charles Anderdun. That's a great last name. He says, can the secondary handle USC's receivers? Straight up.
No one's going to cover Marquise Lee one-on-one. He's the best wideout in the country. But
It's true.
And I'm not just saying on Utah State. I mean pretty much any corner. But I think as a whole, a lot of it's going to come down to the defensive line and the linebackers getting pressure on the quarterback. You can't give them time for these guys to develop their routes and get a good throw out to these guys because they will get open. I think that the secondary will hopefully do a good enough job in covering them, but a lot of it is going to be an overall team defensive struggle.
And that was actually the thought I had is it's not going to be man for man. I don't think our secondary is going to be able to match the receivers if all that was playing was going to be that. But we do have the advantage of having a defensive line and a linebacker core who's going to be able to contribute. I think our defense is capable of handling their offense. As Matt said, Marquise Lee is an absolute specimen. There's no one in the nation who could consistently make him miss balls or whatever you would want there. So team defense-wise, I think we've got a shot, but our secondary, it's going to be a challenge for sure.
New to the tweet sheet this week is Ben. He says, 5 yards per carry is great, but Hill doesn't have any big runs this year. What is it going to take to get him going? Less work, maybe?
Well, and it's actually something that I brought up. I didn't actually bring it up during our discussion of it, but I was talking about it earlier. People look at big runs wondering. I'm kind of confused because he has several runs of 10+ yards on the season so far, but people apparently just want him 30+ yard runs for touchdowns, and that's what we're going to be considering big. The guy's produced. He's proven he can produce, and he proved he could produce last year. People are doubting this, but he has proven everything I need him to as far as his capability to run against top defenses in the past. He hasn't done it yet this year, but that doesn't affect his playability at all in my mind.
Joshua Wright tweets in, why can't Lance kick field goals? Okay, backstory on this is that Lance and Steve Schwartzman from Rock Jocks were invited down onto the field to participate in a field goal kicking contest from the 15-yard line. Steve made his on the first attempt, and Lance, how did yours go?
It didn't go so hot.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
So I guess Matt Wells will not be inviting you to be a kicker.
No, I'm definitely behind a microphone for a reason. It's my smooth and sultry voice, not my smooth and sultry foot. So
why can't you kick a field goal?
I'm just not. We don't need to get
Some
into
people are made to kick field goals. Some people are made for the theater.
Yes.
Lance is not
Now, see,
made.
here's the deal.
For the former.
If you were to put me on stage and tell me to act like I was kicking a field goal, I would nail that. So,
Utah State Sports tweets in, why didn't we have a parade in the homecoming float? And he's starting the rallying cry for us to do that next year.
Resources. If anyone wants to hook us
Uh,
up,
We're still kind of poor.
I got like a 96 Nissan Maxima we could all sit in and wave at people, but like that's not exactly what people are looking for spectacle.
Here's the thing. If we were to be in that, my inner love for the movie Animal House would probably have it more like the ending of that, which I think Logan City would let happen once and never, ever again.
Derek tweets in. He says, does being on the show help with the ladies?
No.
Lance?
Two
of us are married on this show, so
my girlfriend listens, and
That's good.
She comments. She talks to me about it.
Did you have a girlfriend before joining the show?
Yeah,
oh, that's unfortunate.
but I still have
All right,
her
see,
now,
it's
which
just
is a good
fluke,
sign.
because he's new and it just
Which is-
happened.
which
I've been
is-
here for a
which
year
is-
and nothing.
No, but it's a good sign that, I mean, at least she's still around, I guess.
Ogden Aggie tweets in. He says, as I prepare to watch Utah State play traditional power USC on network television, what should concern me the most?
Their speed. That was my big stress point from the game. They're going to be fast. They're going to be faster than any team we've seen. And like I said, they have the raw talent.
And even on top of that, I mean, Kyle Goon actually tweeted out about this earlier, that they had a defensive lineman chasing a running back all the way down the field and keeping pace with them.
Mm-hmm. Their speed on defense is what scares me.
Their man-to-man athleticism all over the field is something we need to be concerned with.
Blake tweets in, would you pick Chucky Keaton or Johnny Manziel to start your football team?
Ooh, with all the factors involved,
All the
of
factors.
leadership,
Everything.
and ability,
All the factors.
Chucky Keaton, no question.
Yep.
Johnny Manziel is an absolute. He's just a low character individual. Look at everything of his off the field. I mean, granted, tremendous talent. The dude is absolutely unreal of what he can do on a football field. But he's also the kind of idiot that'll melt down and get you stupid penalties from taunting and stuff like that. Chucky Keaton, is he going to do that? No.
And not only taunting, but taunting about mistakes and legitimate infractions upon NCAA rules. Like, he's a time bomb. Like, you never know when he's just going to go off and make something terrible happen for your organization. Once again, brilliant football player, but I would put my organization in the hands of someone who is not only a fantastic football player, but a character individual as well.
Basically, he's your classic case of $1 million arm and a 10-cent head.
Wow. Very well said. I will just say Chucky Keaton is not just a noun, he is a verb. That's all I'll say on that. Thanks, everyone, for tweeting into the tweet
He's an
sheet, as always.
adjective.
He is all parts of speech.
Exactly. He's
Can-
everything.
Can we make him a pronoun too?
Yes.
We can
He's a pronoun now.
Start referring to things as Chuckies.
Thanks, everyone, for tweeting into the tweet sheet, as always. Make sure you tweet them in any time of the week at USU Front Row on Twitter, because you should all be following us, and you should all be participating in the tweet sheet.
He could also be an adverb. Chuckly.
For our last segment of the day, we get to throw our mic over to someone who has something that they want to rip on, or a topic they want to cover for the day. Today we're going to Jeff Browning with today's rant.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
This really isn't a rant. There's nothing I'm particularly mad about. This is more a tribute to two of the most amazing people I've ever met, which I happened to meet at the Weber State game on Saturday night. As many of you know, I have the opportunity to work in the athletic department. And to many of you, that's pretty cool. But in reality, there's not a lot of perks that come from it. But the one perk that did come from it was I had the opportunity to meet Bryson and Riley Carpenter at the Weber State game. Now, for those of you who attended the game, if you noticed, at about 9 minutes in the pregame, two kids were escorted onto the field in wheelchairs. Well, that was Bryson and Riley. What stood out to me about these kids is how much the game meant to them. These are kids who are in wheelchairs. They have disabilities that many of us just don't comprehend, nor do we have to deal with. And as I stood next to Bryson before we went onto the field, and the students were doing the Scotsman, I looked over at him and noticed him doing the Scotsman along with the students. And that moment hit me, if for no other reason than to realize that sports are important because it is the great unifying force that we have. Because in this one moment, this one place, Bryson and Riley were just as normal as you and me. They were just fans. They're cheering their team. Yes, sports is important to me. Utah State is important to me. I love it when the Aggies win. But I can never complain if they lose because my life goes on. My life is normal. I get to wake up. I get to go to school. I get to work a job. But for these two kids, life isn't always as normal as it is on game day. So just remember, Aggie fans, what really is important and why sports are so important to us, because it brings everyone together. not just everyone on the show, but Aggies from all over. And to these little Aggies, I say, keep going, keep singing, keep being Aggies, because you're part of our team. And even if, the team doesn't win another game, it matters to these kids. I know there are some players that listen to this show. Don't win it for me. Don't win it for the other students. But maybe consider how much it means to these two little kids. Go win it for them this weekend. Because those two, this is their chance to be normal. Because they are Aggies, just like all of us. Go get them.
Yes.
Yep.
There's some serious arms around.
That's
right
what I'm
there.
talking about right there.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to the Front Row Show. And again, shout out to Bryson and Riley. Arms around. They are true Aggies in every step of the way.
If those two want to come join us on the dark side next home game, they are more than welcome. It's going to get loud and rowdy. But I tell you what,
awesome.
More people ought to come on out. It was a good start. We had a nice little turnout. And look, everything starts small. It was me and a bunch of my friends. But, hey, that's how the I Believe chant started. And look where that went.
Yeah. I know that there's people out there who are thinking, hey, look, we got some rowdy other people out there with tickets.
The southeast
Go join 'em.
corner.
Go hit it up, guys.
Bring your ticket stubs, though, because stadium staff came down at one point and did ask us, hey, we need all the students on this side of the aisle, to which we presented our tickets and said, we're all season ticket holders. Hey, this is where we'll be all year, so come join us.
We're promoting anarchy on the Front Row.
We are not promoting anarchy. We're promoting a revolution.
With our arms around one another.
Oh.
We'll walk to anarchy with our arms on each other's shoulders, man. That's the way it's going to be.
Beautiful.
We're all going to burn together is what it's going to happen. It's going to be beautiful.
This could go on forever.
Aggie blue flames.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to this episode of the Front Row Show. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, as always. Interact with us on Facebook. Follow the rest of the Front Row Network. Get involved with them. And for the Front Row Show, I'm Jeff Browning.
I'm Lance Rasmussen.
And I'm Matt Sonnenberg.
Go Aggies! All right, Aggie. That would.
It happens. Hey, Aggie fans, thanks again for listening to this episode of The Front Row Show. Be sure to download all our archived episodes on iTunes, follow us on Twitter at USU Front Row, like our page on Facebook at facebook.com/USU Front Row, and subscribe to us on our new YouTube channel at youtube.com/USU Front Row. Go Aggies!